going on, guys? Welcome back to the shop, or welcome to the shop. If you're new around here, this is the Kart Doctor YouTube channel where we cover all things golf carts. What do we got going on today? Well, we've got a highly requested video today about electric motor rebuilds. More specifically, today we're going to be doing a DIY friendly electric motor rebuild. We're not going to use any specialty tools like I would normally use to do this job with. We're just going to be using tools that the average DIYer would have laying around their shop. Without any further ado, let's get to it. Guys, we got you over here back on the bench, and this motor that we're going to be working on today is out of a PDS cart. It's one I've had sitting on the shelf for a while. I do know that it works, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to tear it down and refurb it. We're going to throw some new brushes in it, and hopefully we'll give you guys a good how-to on how to do this yourself. So let's talk a little bit about the motor first. What kind of motor is it? What did it come out of? Like I said, this is a PDS motor. It came out of a PDS cart, a TXT. This is what they consider a shunt wound motor, or as some people like to say, a SEPX, or separately excited motor. And all that means is the field windings are wound in parallel versus a series, and that's how it is powered in the golf cart. Instead of snaking the current through like you would in a series cart, power is applied to both sides simultaneously, and that's how you get it to run. So let's go through some of the testing procedures that you want to do on this motor, just to make sure everything is good before we even continue, and we'll go from there. Alright, so let's do some tests on this motor. First off, I do know this is a good running motor. I pulled it off a cart about 5 years ago. It's been sitting on the shelf, but I dug it out for this video because it does need an overhaul. So anyways, first thing you want to check for on these motors are internal shorts. And the best way to do that is you're going to take your multimeter here and you're going to put it on your beep feature or your continuity feature. I don't know if you can hear the beep or not, but it's beeping. But anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to be testing a few things. Set this up where you can see it right here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to test between the two fields. We're going to make sure there's continuity between them. If you don't have continuity between the fields, that means one of the field windings is broken and the motor's no good. There's no way to repair that unless you have another set of fields, or if you want to spend a lot of money to send it off and have it rewound, which is definitely not worth it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to test, we're going to go between F1 and F2, and really quick, let me clean this label off so you guys can see what I'm doing a little better. We got our meter set to continuity test. The beep test is what people call it, and I don't know if you can hear that on the camera or not, but the meter is beeping, and we're going to go between F2 and F1. We get a good connection, and we're looking for continuity. And we have continuity, and it's less than an ohm, which is 0.9. It's wiggling between 1 and 0.9, so we're good there. If the fields do not have continuity, it means that there's a wire broken in the windings and the fields are no good. That could be the problem why your cart's not running. The next thing we want to test the armature. So we're going to go from A2 and A1. We should have continuity there too. And we do. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but you can see it on the meter here. We're going between 0.6 to 0 ohms. Alright. So that means we're getting continuity through the motor brushes, through the commutator, and back out the other side. The next test we're going to test for are shorts. Shorts to the body of the motor itself between the armature and the fields. We do not want to have any shorts to the chassis of the motor. That would be bad, and that would damage your speed controller if it's really bad. So we're going to take our probe, and I like to just kind of scratch it a little bit to get a good clean surface, and then we're going to touch it to one of the armatures. Alright, and notice we're not getting anything, which is what we want to see. No beeps, no resistance. That means there's no shorts from the chassis to the armature. Now we're going to do the same test to the field. Scratch this off a little clean spot, and we're going to touch the field. Again, no continuity, which is a good thing. That means there's no shorts. And the last test that we're going to do, we're going to test between continuity between the armature and the field. Alright, don't want to see continuity there either. that means there could be a short there too. So we're going to go from A1 or A2 to F2, and no continuity there, which is a good sign. Alright, so we've done the 3 major tests to determine that we don't have any shorts and everything should be proper inside the motor. Now, let's take it apart and we'll throw some new brushes in it, clean it up, and I'll show you how all that's done. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do on these PDS motors is you're going to remove the speed sensor. And if you look down in here, it's already been removed. It's that magnet, that round disc magnet that screws into the shaft right here. That's already been removed. I took that off, I guess, when I took the motor off the cart 5 or 6 years ago, whenever. So we're going to remove that. Step 2 is going to be to remove these 2 1/4-inch bolts. They have a 3/8 head on them. We're going to zap those out. And then we're going to tap the field off of the end cap here and separate the 2 halves of the motor. So I'm going to sit you down and I'm going to get my chuck on my drill, or my impact, and we're going to get that zapped off. Alright, so we got our 3/8 socket on our impact. We're just going to back out these two bolts. 1, 2. We're going to set these to the side for later. Always advise you put them in a small container. Let me go ahead and grab one. Put them in a small container. Keep everything together so you don't lose anything. These things work great. I get them from the Dollar Tree. They're $1 each. And if they get dirty or broken, who cares? They're $1. So anyways, we got that off. Now, typically, the aluminum cap might be stuck to the field, so I just take a hammer. This one's already loose, but I just take a hammer and tap on it, and it'll break it off. So we got that. Let me get the drill out of the way so you can see. We got that apart. Next, we're going to separate the 2 halves, the armature, and the end cap, and the fields. 2 separate units here. Let's come in a little bit closer and take a look, see what we have in here. Alright, here's your field windings. Again, this is a shunt wound field, so they're in parallel, and you can see that by the way it's wired here. It's branching off into 2 sets here. If you have a short in the field windings, like we talked about earlier, typically what causes that is the enamel coating that's on these gets too hot, and it causes the wires to short to the metal retainers inside the motor, which is bad. That was not good, and you need to replace this or just buy a new motor if that's the case. So those are the field windings. We're going to take those outside, pressure wash them out. Yes, it's okay to get it wet and pressure wash it. Not going to hurt a thing. We'll get into that in a second. We've already tested it. We know it's good. Now, let's check out the armature here. I'm going to flip it over with one hand, holding the camera, and let's take a look at the motor brushes. All right. So these brushes, if I can zoom in a little bit here, the brushes actually don't look too bad. We got a lot of life left in them. They're sticking out a lot out of the retainers. All right, look good. They're all loose. They're not stuck, which is a big common issue. I'll put some pictures of some stuck brushes up on the screen here in a minute. But overall, there's really nothing wrong with this motor, which I knew ahead of time because, like I said, it come off of a running cart. But for the purposes of this video, we're tearing it down. So anyways, what's our next step after that? The next step is to get the armature out of the motor cap, and that will be accomplished by pressing it out of the top up here. And don't worry, if you don't have a press, that's okay. I'm going to show you how to do this without a press, because again, this is a DIY friendly rebuild. So let's get set up to get the cap separated from the armature. Alright, got you set up over here. We're going to show you how we get the armature out of the end cap when we don't have a press. Again, just a forewarning, this is not the way I would typically do this, but we are doing a DIY friendly version, and I do realize that not everybody has a shop press. Typically we would put this on there and press it out with the press. Today we're going to improvise. So what are we doing? We've got the end cap set up on 2 jack stands. Now I would recommend using some smaller jack stands. That way they're not spread so far apart. But this is all I had, and we're going to make do with it. So what are we going to do? We are going to take a socket and an extension, and the socket should be just slightly smaller than the diameter of the center shaft right here, because we're knocking the center shaft out of that ball bearing. And we're going to tap it out, and that's that. Now, again, I do not recommend this because hitting it too hard can damage the bearing. We don't want to do that, but this is a DIY friendly rebuild, so that's what we're going to do. So let me get the camera set up and we'll get to tapping it out. Alright, well, let's get to tapping it out. We're going to do our best to do this all at one go. I'm going to put our socket on the end of the shaft, and we're going to give it some whacks. One thing that I do want to mention really quick before we get any farther along, when you are tapping it out, you do not want to tap around or right at this hole where the screw goes in. Because what will happen is you'll peen the sides over, and then your screw for your speed sensor won't fit back in. That's why we're using a socket to go around the edge of it. So I'm going to set you back over here, see if we can get it tapped out. Alright, this socket is actually a little bit too big, so let me get a smaller socket and we'll finish it up. Alright, I got a smaller socket, if you can see that or not. It better fits the diameter of the hole. Still not going to mess up the hole for the screw. Give it a few more taps. Alright, bring you over here and show you what we got so far. It's hard to see on the camera, but we have knocked it out some. You can see that the end of the shaft is now recessed in the bearing. Set you back up over here, give it some more taps. Now, I've almost got it out, and one thing to make note of is you really don't want the armature to fall on the ground. I know it's going to be hard to catch it, but when you do get to this point and it's getting ready to break free, you don't want that to happen. You want to hold on to it just to be safe so you don't damage anything. But anyways, there it is. There's the armature out of the end cap. We're going to go back over on the bench, look at all this, and then we're going to get to cleaning it. So let me get set up and we'll get you back over on the bench. Alright, set up back over here on the bench. I got the end cap and the armature. We got it out without damaging the hole for the speed sensor. Let's look at the end cap really quick and just talk about a few points to take note of on these end caps. First off, first thing we note, all the brushes went in as they're supposed to. They're spring loaded, and if they're not stuck, they should do this. A stuck brush is bad because what will happen is if it sticks, as it wears down, it won't make contact with the armature anymore, causing current not to flow and the motor not to run. So this is a good thing here. The brushes are unstuck. Alright, the other good thing to note, there's no signs of damage from overheating. All the sleeving over the wires are good. Nothing's worn down or missing. We don't have any damaged springs, so we don't have any where the wire, I don't know if you can see or not down there, where the wire has come out of the motor brush. That's a good thing. That could cause the motor not to run. I'll throw some examples again up on the screen of that as I'm talking. But anyways, from here what we're going to do, we're going to take off these two nuts here that hold the studs in for the motor brushes, and then we're also going to take these two bolts out here and take the retainer assembly out, and then we're going to clean all this. Now let's look at the armature. Some signs of a bad armature. Visually, you don't want to have any bad scarring or scoring on the commutator rings right here, or the bus bars, commutator bus bars. This one, I don't know if you can see it, there are some small grooves there, but that's nothing to really be of concern, especially for a DIY rebuild. If I was rebuilding this in the shop, we would put this on a lathe, we would turn it down smooth and flat, and then we'd resurface it to make it nice and new again. But I'm going to show you how to resurface this on your own, where you don't have to have any fancy tools. The other thing you're going to be looking for is signs of overheating, where all these places, or these individual windings, are soldered into the bus bars. We're looking for separations, and we don't see any, or hot spots or melted spots. I'll throw some pictures up if I can find them of some bad issues with commutators and armatures. But anyways, we're going to clean it up and we're going to get it all put back together. So I'm going to show you the cleaning and reconditioning process of the armature next. Alright, cleaning and reconditioning the armature the DIY way. What we're going to do before we pressure wash it, we're going to clean this surface up, try and knock down some of these ridges a little bit, and polish the bus bars. And the way we do that, I like to use emery cloth. You buy this stuff at the hardware store or at any automotive store, and for this purpose I love to use the 320 grit, which is not listed on the back of this, but I like emery cloth because it's really durable and it doesn't deteriorate as quickly as regular sandpaper. If you don't have any of this, you can use regular sandpaper, no big deal. But what I like to do is I cut me a piece about 6 to 8 inches, and I just wrap it around the commutator like this, and I grab it with my fingers and I just roll it back and forth while I'm putting pressure on it. And that, very little effort already, is already starting to polish it up and clean it, get rid of all the scoring. So we're going to do that until you feel like you're confident that it's clean enough. Again, ultimately you'd want it smooth and flat, but that would take a long time doing it this way. The big thing is just to get all the big, knock all the high edges down and polish it up good. So I'm going to throw you on a time lapse. We're going to get this cleaned up, and then we'll come back and talk about the next step. Alright guys, we're back. I got this polished down as good as it really needs to be. Again, we're doing a DIY rebuild just to get your cart back up and going. So we've got it polished down pretty good. All these black bands you see are grooves where we cannot get smooth. You can keep going with this as long as you want. You could probably get it down smooth enough, but we're not doing all that today. We're just getting it good enough to be safe and running for the foreseeable future. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take it out and we're going to pressure wash everything. We're going to pressure wash the armature, the fields, and we're also going to do the end cap. Now let's talk about the end cap. We haven't taken the brushes out yet. Make sure you don't get the brushes wet if you're going to reuse your brushes. If you're not going to reuse your brushes, still not a bad idea to take them out before you wash all this. That way you can get it good and clean. We can wash the retainer and the cap, but we don't need to get the brushes wet. We're going to go ahead and put new brushes in this motor just for the sake of the video. And if you're wondering where to get brushes, there'll be a link down in the description where you can get brushes that'll fit the motor. Most all these brushes are pretty common as far as fitment. One size fits all for a lot of different motors. So I'll leave a link down in the description where you can buy new brushes. So I'm going to take this out and we're going to get outside and pressure wash it. I'm not going to show you the pressure washing process, but I'll bring you back when everything's clean and we're ready for reassembly. Alright, we've got the nuts off of the studs. The studs just pop out like this, and what I like to do is use a 6-in-1 screwdriver, which I need to go grab. 6-in-1 screwdriver will fit these screws. If you take out the big bit, it'll fit these screws, and you can get the brush retainer ring out pretty easy. It's just got 2. Some of them use all 4, most of them just use the 2. Bolts out. They're really small, tiny bolts. Put them in our little bin so we don't lose them. And then now we can take our brush assembly out. Now, I want to talk about this really quick because this is an important step in the reassembly process. Look at how the brushes are crisscrossed. Alright, you've got one set here, and you notice they're 180 degrees off from one another. Alright, and here's the second one right here. It's going to this one and this one, 180 degrees off. When you put them back together, you want to make sure you put them in that orientation. If you don't put them back like that, the motor won't run right. Alright, so this process is really simple since the brushes aren't stuck. But let's talk about if the brushes do get stuck. What do? You've got a few options. The first option, and the one that I like to do, is I'll just take my finger and I'll just press on them and start wiggling them back and forth and freeing them up until I can get them completely out. You pull the spring back and they'll pop right out like that. Another technique that works well too is if they're really stuck and you can't wiggle them, this is another technique that I like to use. I'll put the brush holder down on a flat surface and I'll tap the brass keepers a few times, and typically that'll kind of break up the corrosion inside to where I can then start pressing them out and getting them free. And then we would take them out just like that. And then your third option would be, if you're going to replace the brushes anyways, just to chisel them out with a screwdriver or something and just break them apart and crumble them essentially. Most of the time, if you've got a lot of life left on your brushes like this, you don't have to do that, because I can show you how to reuse old brushes even if they're stuck in here. So I'm going to take the brushes out and I'm going to show you how to reuse them. And let's just get the springs pulled back. This works really good with a pair of needle nose. You'll just de-arm them like this. And like I said, they don't fall out typically unless you force them out. And then what I like to do is I'll go back to my emery cloth. There's 2 ways you can do this. One with emery cloth and one with a file. But I'll take the emery cloth and I'll get a flat piece of wood or use my finger and get in and sand the insides of these, all 4 sides of these brush keepers. That way they'll get nice and smooth and it'll knock all the corrosion off of them. After I do that, I'll take the brushes, same way. I'll lay my emery cloth down on a flat surface and I'll just do 3 or 4 seconds of light sanding on all 4 sides. Again, just enough to clean them up to get the corrosion off if they're corroded. That way you can reuse them. And once you clean the keeper and the brush, it should slide in and move freely without any restrictions. Alright guys, we're back over here on the bench and we've got all of our parts pressure washed. I'm not going to show that process because it's pretty simple. Just use your favorite degreaser and clean it really good. I like Purple Power, but you use what you like. We're going to continue with the cleaning process now. just finalizing everything before we start putting everything back together. So we've already went over polishing the commutator. There's one last thing we got to do to clean it, and that is cleaning out all the little grooves in between each one of the bus bars. And what I do with that is I like to use these little cheap razor blades from Harbor Freight. They're like 60 cents now, I think. But I will take that and I will scrape in between every one of these bars. And if you'll notice, it'll be hard to see on camera. Let's see if I can come in here. But some of these have some stuff, like right here, some stuff that are, I like to get all that out, because if the two bars short together, that's not good. So anyways, what I like to do, I'll take my Sharpie and I'll just make a mark on one. That way I know where I start, and I will take my blade and I will go through and I'll just scrape out each one of these. Make sure they're clean inside, and we'll do that all the way around. Alright, so we got the commutator cleaned up in between the bus bars over here, ready to go back together. The next step will be putting the brushes back in the brush holder and then getting that mounted back in the end cap. So remember, we talked earlier about alternating brushes, so that's what we're going to do. We'll put one in there, and then we'll put the other one at the 6 o'clock position, we'll call it. And then next, remember, we got to put the studs back in the holes like that. So I'm going to make sure they're on the same side like this. And the next one we'll put at the 9 o'clock position. Actually, I'm going to flip it this way. Put at the 3 o'clock position like so. And the other one will go at the 9 o'clock position. That way we have alternating brushes. Alright, and the two studs are where we can put them in the holes. Next, we'll get that into the end cap. Pretty simple. Make sure you have your plastic insulators in there. And I elected to reuse the old brushes because they were in such good shape. Again, if you want to replace brushes, definitely up to you. Yours are really worn down, but mine were very much reusable, so I decided not to put the new ones in. So we'll get the two studs in, and we'll line up our holes here. All right, here for our bolts, our small bolts or screws. Get it started. Get the other one. Get it started. Now, one thing to note, you can see how these are kind of getting jumbled up in here. You do want to try and lay the wires somewhat out so they don't get all bound up. Let's take this bolt back out so we can get them a little bit neater in here. Actually, I'm going to take this brush out and go under that one. Like that. So it sits in there a lot neater. And also, when you're putting this back together, just make sure you have your protective sheathing over the wires. That way they're not grounding out and touching the metal anywhere. So let's put the screws back in now. One in, and we'll get the other one in, and I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera so I don't bore you with this, and we'll come back when we get ready to do the brushes, and I'll show you a little trick that I have on fixing the brushes. Okay, we got the brush holder mounted and the brushes back installed. Now I want to show you a little trick that I like to do for the brushes and the springs when we put the end cap back on the armature. You've got to have the brushes out for the armature to fit back in there, and it's hard to put the springs on once you get the armature back pressed back on the bearing. So what I like to do is, if you can see, I will push the brush out almost to the end and make sure the spring touches it right on the side like that. It's not pushing it down, it's putting a little sideways load on it to hold it like that. And so what happens is, once you put the cap back on and you press it back down, then you just reach in here and tap the brushes and it'll slot them back into place, and it'll put the spring back on the top the way it should be. All right, so that's my little trick and tip for doing the brushes so you can get the armature back in. So anyways, we got that up. Let's put the nuts and the washers. Remember, you got a phenolic washer that goes on first. That insulates the stud from the cap. Then you got a washer, and then you got your nut that goes on. And you want to tighten this down good before you put it back on the cart. So phenolic, flat washer, and nut. Just like that. We'll get that tightened down, we'll get this put on, and we'll bring you back when it's time to seat the brushes. Alright, off camera, I went ahead and pressed this back on. Nothing special to see there. We just hammer it back on. Again, not the ideal method, but it works because this is the DIY method. Just remember to hammer on the outside of the bearing race that you can see, not the actual shaft. And what I like to do with that, if I'm doing the hammer method, is I'll use a socket that's the same size as that race, the inner race. That way it gets put on right. Then we'll go back into the brushes now, and I'll bring you in a little bit closer so you can see what's going on here. And we have a few that popped out, but we just press the brush back down and the spring clips over top of it just like it's supposed to. Same with this one. Put the brush in, press it down, spring pops back in. Here's one that didn't fall off when we hammered it, but all I got to do is press it and it snaps into place. And last one, this one here, and snaps back into place. And you can see how once you get the armature back in, it would be hard to reach in here and get that spring back around. So I like using that little tip to put that back together. Alright, so we've got all of our brushes seated. The last thing to do is to put our fields back on. So we'll put them over like so, and we'll flip it all over, put the last two bolts in. Got one here, one on this side. We'll get them lined up. We'll drop in the hole, and we'll get our gun, put the battery on it. It's not a bad idea to put a little anti-seize on the ends of these bolts right here, just in case you need to take it apart again. This one has a little bit on it left over from the factory. We'll just get it snug. You don't have to go crazy on tightening these up. Just a few clicks. And again, you can do it by hand too. But then the last step would be to put your speed sensor back in. I don't have one of those right now. I'm waiting on one to come in. Put that in, and then it's ready to go back on the cart. Alright guys, and just like that, we got her finished. We went through every process from initial inspection to tear down, cleaning, and reassembly. Everything we did, we kept it DIY friendly, so you could do at your home in your own garage. If you did find this content useful, please consider giving it a thumbs up. That helps everybody else on YouTube see it. And if you have any comments or questions about your motor rebuild, please leave them below, and I'll do my best to get to you and help you out. Also, if you're looking for the brushes to replace the ones in your motor because they're bad or too far corroded, I will have a link down below where you can purchase those. Anyways, thanks for watching guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.